All right, everyone, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive. Today, we're tackling nationalism and how it's still a major player, even in our globalized world.
Definitely a hot topic and super relevant for all you UPSC aspirants out there.
Absolutely. Nationalism pops up all over your syllabus, whether it's international relations, political science, even history.
And understanding how it all connects. That's key for cracking those mains and prelims questions.
Exactly. We're going to be digging into some fascinating real-world examples today.
Oh yeah, we've got some good ones lined up.
Like, how did Singapore build such a strong national identity and become such an economic powerhouse?
Yeah.
Without the same kind of ethnic or cultural homogeneity that we see in a lot of other nation states.
It's fascinating, right? It really challenges the textbook definition of a nation.
Totally. So how did they pull it off?
Well, the key here is what we call civic nationalism.
Civic nationalism. Okay, break that down for me.
Think of it like this. It's a shared sense of national pride and unity, but it's built around specific values and goals.
So it's not necessarily tied to ethnicity or language. It's more about a shared vision for the future.
Exactly. And in Singapore's case, the ruling party really cultivated this. Like, they invested heavily in public institutions.
Oh, I see. So they created a system that encouraged everyone to strive for success, regardless of their background.
Precisely. They promoted meritocracy, and they created this sense of shared purpose, like, we're all in this together, striving for a better future for Singapore.
That's actually brilliant. And it clearly worked. I mean, look at Singapore's economic success.
It definitely paid off.
Makes you think about India's own development, right?
Absolutely. While India's got a much more diverse social fabric, you can't ignore the role national pride plays in its economic ambitions.
Yeah, think about campaigns like in India, they tap into that same desire for, like, national achievement, that sense of we can do this.
Exactly. It's all about channeling that energy and focusing it on economic growth.
So nationalism can be a powerful engine for development, but it's not just one size fits all, right? We see different countries using it in different ways.
Absolutely. And some of those ways are more, let's say, assertive than others.
Right. Our sources point out how powerful countries like China and Russia have used nationalism to kind of flex their muscles on the world stage.
Yeah, they've definitely been using it strategically to assert themselves.
For instance, China's actions towards Taiwan,
Mm-hmm. Definitely a prime example.
their response to independence movements in Tibet and Xinjiang.
And even their use of events like the Beijing Olympics, they're all calculated moves to project an image of strength and unity, both at home and internationally.
It's like they're saying, we're a force to be reckoned with, and don't you forget it.
Exactly. It's all about sending a message.
And then there's Russia, where fuel nationalism takes center stage,
Yeah, they've really weaponized their control over gas and oil
using it as leverage to influence neighboring countries.
and advance their own geopolitical interests.
But that's a risky game, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. While fuel nationalism might bring short-term gains, it could also lead to international backlash and economic vulnerability down the line.
Makes you wonder where India's nuclear program fits into all of this, doesn't it? Is
Yeah.
it about national self-assertion, a deterrent,
Mm.
or both?
Yeah.
Something to ponder for sure.
Definitely lots to think about there. But let's shift gears a bit. Our source argues that while globalization might be weakening traditional nation-state models, it's actually strengthening cultural and ethnic nationalism.
Wait, hold on. How does that even work? Globalization weakening nation states, but at the same time, strengthening nationalism based on culture and ethnicity. It seems contradictory.
It's a fascinating dynamic for sure. In a world where borders are becoming more porous, with all the technology, trade, and migration, people are sometimes finding stronger identities in smaller, more localized groups.
So it's like, in a world that feels increasingly uncertain and complex, people are seeking a sense of belonging in those smaller groups.
Precisely. It's about finding your roots in a rapidly changing world.
But this isn't exactly new, is it? I mean, back in the 1960s, you had things like Quebec separatism in Canada,
Right, the desire for autonomy and self-determination,
Scottish and Welsh nationalism in the UK.
and the rise of black nationalism in the USA.
So these sentiments have been simmering for decades, right? It's not just a recent phenomenon.
Absolutely. These movements highlight the enduring power of cultural and ethnic identity, even in the face of globalization.
So how do we make sense of this then? Globalization is supposed to bring us closer together, but it seems like it's also driving people apart in some ways.
It's definitely a complex and multifaceted process, with both unifying and divisive tendencies.
Right, we see that clearly.
And understanding this complexity is crucial for analyzing the contemporary world.
Agreed. It's not a simple black and white situation.
And that's what makes it so interesting to study, right?
Absolutely. It's
Yeah.
all about recognizing the nuances and the different ways that nationalism plays out in different contexts.
Yeah, it's like when people feel like their way of life is under threat, they start looking for someone to blame.
And that's where these right-wing groups come in, with their simple solutions to complex problems.
Exactly. They point the finger at immigrants, at multiculturalism, anything that seems different or foreign.
And it resonates with people who are feeling anxious, who are struggling to adapt to a rapidly changing world.
It's like they're offering a sense of security, a return to a simpler time, even if that time never really existed.
Right. It's all about tapping into those deep-seated fears and anxieties.
And we see this happening all over, right?
Absolutely. Our source mentions groups like the National Front in France,
Oh, yeah, they've been around for a while.
the Freedom Party in Austria.
And similar parties in Italy, Belgium, the Netherlands, they're all riding this wave of anti-globalization sentiment.
Even the One Nation Party in Australia, they're tapping into that same vein.
It's a global phenomenon for sure.
And it makes you wonder, are we seeing similar trends in India? How much of this resistance to globalization is rooted in genuine economic concerns versus, cultural anxieties?
It's a crucial question, especially for anyone interested in policymaking.
Absolutely. Understanding those underlying motivations is key to figuring out how to address these issues.
And it's not just about identifying the problems, it's also about finding solutions that work for everyone.
Right, solutions that don't just pit one group against another.
Exactly. We need to move beyond this us versus them mentality.
So we've talked about nationalism as a reaction to globalization, but it's interesting how global forces can actually fuel nationalist sentiment too.
It's kind of a paradox, isn't it?
Totally. You'd think globalization would lead to more cosmopolitanism, of a sense of global citizenship.
You'd think so, right, with all the interconnectedness and exchange of ideas.
But it seems like it can also have the opposite effect, like it's creating this sense of unease, a feeling that one's culture or way of life is under threat.
Yeah, it's like people are clinging even tighter to their national identity as a way of coping with all the changes.
Makes sense. It's a way of creating a sense of stability in a world that feels increasingly chaotic.
Precisely. And that's where nationalist leaders often step in.
Oh, yeah, they're masters at exploiting those fears and anxieties.
They offer simple narratives, easy answers to complex problems.
And they appeal to people's desire for a sense of belonging, for a strong leader who will protect them from the perceived threats of globalization.
It's a powerful combination, and it can be very effective in mobilizing support.
So globalization is kind of creating the conditions for its own backlash.
Yeah, it's like it's sowing the seeds of its own undoing.
It reminds me of what we were talking about earlier with the rise of fascism in Europe.
Oh, yeah, that's a great historical parallel.
That was partly fueled by the economic hardship and social upheaval brought about by rapid industrialization and, globalization.
Exactly. Those same anxieties and fears are at play today, just in a different context.
It's like history repeating itself, in a way.
It's a reminder that we need to learn from the past if we want to avoid making the same mistakes.
Absolutely. Understanding the historical context is crucial for making sense of the present.
So, thinking about our UPSC aspirants here, how can they apply this understanding to their exam preparation?
First off, they need to recognize the multifaceted nature of nationalism.
Yeah, it's not a simple black and white issue.
It's a force that interacts with economic, social, and cultural factors in really complex ways.
And those interactions can be unpredictable, too.
So they need to go beyond just memorizing definitions. They need to really grapple with the nuances of how nationalism plays out in the real world.
Exactly. They need to be able to analyze different types of nationalism
Identify their root causes.
and understand their impact on domestic and international politics.
Basically demonstrate a deep and nuanced understanding of this force that's shaping our world.
Couldn't have said it better myself. It's really fascinating how technology adds another layer to this whole discussion of nationalism.
Right. It's like nationalism is evolving along with technology.
Absolutely. And this is a key area for UPSC aspirants to focus on, how technology is shaping nationalism in the 21st century.
Yeah, it's not just about borders and territories anymore.
Exactly. The internet has created these virtual communities that transcend physical boundaries.
So people with shared national identities can connect and organize online in ways that were unimaginable just a few decades ago.
It's incredible how quickly things have changed.
It makes you think about the role social media played in the Arab Spring uprisings.
Oh, yeah. That's a prime example of how technology can amplify nationalist sentiment.
People were able to mobilize and organize online in ways that were never possible before.
It really shifted the balance of power in some cases.
But technology can also be used for more nefarious purposes, right?
Unfortunately, yes, we've seen how social media can be used to spread propaganda and hate speech.
And even incite violence, often along nationalist lines.
The Rohingya crisis in Myanmar is a tragic example of this.
It's a reminder that technology can be a double-edged sword. It can bring people together, but it can also tear them apart.
It's all about how it's used.
So for our UPSC aspirants, it's crucial to think about nationalism in this broader context, how technology is shaping it and how it's being shaped by it.
Absolutely. It's a dynamic and evolving relationship.
And understanding this relationship is key for analyzing current events and predicting future trends.
Be prepared to discuss this in your exams, folks. It's a hot topic.
So we've covered a lot of ground today, from the historical roots of nationalism to its various forms and expressions,
Its complex dance with globalization.
and now the emerging role of technology.
It's clear that nationalism is a powerful force that will continue to shape the world in profound ways.
And as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with one final thought-provoking question.
Okay, hit me with it.
How might future technological advancements, like artificial intelligence and virtual reality, further shape the future of nationalism?
That's a great question.
Will they create even stronger bonds between people who share a national identity? Or will they further fragment societies and lead to new forms of division?
It's hard to say for sure, but it's something we all need to think about.
Technology is evolving so rapidly, and it's having such a profound impact on our lives.
It's changing the way we communicate, the way we consume information, even the way we think about ourselves and our place in the world.
So the study of nationalism is never truly finished, right? There's always something new to learn, something new to analyze.
That's what makes it so fascinating. It's a constantly evolving field of study.
All right, folks, that's a wrap for today's deep dives into nationalism in a globalized world.
Hope you found it insightful and engaging.
We covered a lot of ground, but hopefully it gave you a better understanding of this complex and multifaceted phenomenon.
And remember, the journey of knowledge doesn't end here.
Keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep pushing the boundaries of your understanding.
And if you enjoyed this deep dive, please hit that subscribe button and give us a like.
It really helps us reach more curious minds like yours. Until next time, happy studying.